Okay, I have a fairly full board for you for this introduction. You can see I've got numbers and letters all over it, so I'm hoping it doesn't get too confusing. Having completed the previous sessions, completed the homework that I've given you, you should now have a comprehensive understanding of your income. So what is that income you are going to base your budget on? You should have a comprehensive understanding of all of your expenses, and you should now have converted them to a monthly figure. So if you've popped them all into the Grandma's Jars application, you should now have converted them all to a monthly figure so that we can make an apples to apples comparison between what you earn and what you spend. So if we have a look at this scenario here, obviously this is a miniature version of a budget. Most budgets have way more jars than this. We've got a basic budget here that says I earn $5,500 per month, and the total of my jars, the total of my expenses down the bottom here is $5,102, which means that I have a surplus of $398, which is fantastic. We've got a surplus. Now, as I said many times before, most people don't start with a surplus first time round, okay? So if you can get to this position, fantastic. So I know that as long as I stick to my budget, I will have this surplus. And that surplus, as you know, is then the key to us achieving each of these steps in our cascade that allows us to master our money. So the first step will be to put this $398 to keep it accumulating into our central account so that our budget equals our bank accounts. Now, it's one thing on paper or in your Grandma's Jars application or on a whiteboard to have a surplus. It's fantastic that we've identified our income, we've identified our expenses, and there's a surplus. Brilliant. However, it's one thing having a surplus like this and completely another actually creating that surplus in reality. So that is what our budget is for. Our budget, we've set it up so far, but now we need to start using it. Our budget is a tool to turn this potential surplus into reality. So in this tutorial, what I'm going to take you through is how do you use the Grandma's Jars budgeting application to turn this surplus into reality so you can make all of this happen. This is exciting. This is where the rubber hits the road. Now we're going to have a look at the Grandma's Jars app. Okay, so here we are on Dean and Emma's position summary page. They have done all the hard work. They have identified their income. They have identified their expenses, and they have realistically cut back their spending so that their budget is now showing a potential minimum monthly surplus of $742 and an average monthly surplus of $1,374. This is very exciting, but of course it is one thing to have a surplus on paper and quite another to make that surplus a reality. I often meet with people who have tried budgeting before. They've sat down at a moment of financial stress, put together their income and their expenses, identified a potential surplus, and then tried to stick to it. But within a few weeks, it's fallen apart because they didn't have a way of tracking how their spending was going relative to the spending boundaries they had set themselves. In this lesson, I want to share with you how you can use the Grandma's Jars web and mobile applications to record your spending, and more importantly, how to use it to guide your spending so that at any point in time, you know exactly how much you can afford to spend without blowing the budget. So Dean and Emma have set their spending boundaries here. Remember, this is what they are allocating to their jars on a monthly basis, not necessarily what they are spending. Whatever they don't spend accumulates in their jars for future months. So they've set their spending boundaries. Let's now go to the jar summary page. This is the most important page of the entire budget. You can see that this is for September 2017. What we have got in this left-hand column is what has been accumulated in their jars from previous months. So what we don't spend in one month builds up in our jars for the next month. The monthly budget is what Dean and Emma are allocating to each jar on a monthly basis. So these are the same numbers that we saw on the position summary page. In the next column, we can see what has been actually spent so far this month. Now, there are 3 ways you can record what is actually being spent. At the top here, you can see Dean and Emma's everyday jar. They've had nothing carrying forward from last month. They are allowing $1,357 to their jar each month. And so far, they have spent $1,255 of it, which means they have $102.01 funds remaining in this jar. So let's just say Dean and Emma have just completed their weekly grocery shopping. They've spent $100, and to enter that transaction into the budget, they can either go to the transactions page here, and once on the transactions page, they can click on Add Transaction. This box will pop up. Here they can enter the details of this specific transaction, starting with the date. Now, the system defaults to today's date, which is the 29th of September 2017. The description is simply groceries. Of course, you can put any description you like in here, but let's just put groceries. The amount is $100. The jar this expense comes from is the everyday jar, so I will select everyday from the drop down, and from the expenses drop down, I will select groceries. And the last thing to enter is which account they paid for the groceries from. Dean and Emma pay for all their everyday expenses, including groceries, from their everyday account, so I will select everyday. I will then click on the Add Transaction button, and you can see here under the list of transactions that Dean and Emma now have a new transaction on the 29th of September for groceries worth $100. If I go back to the jar summary page now, you can see that the amount spent has now increased by $100 from $1,255.91 to $1,355.91, and the funds remaining has dropped by $100 from $102.01 to $2.01. So this means that of the $1,357.92 Dean and Emma started the month with in this jar, they now only have $201 left to spend, which means they are very close to baked beans and mashed potato time. But fortunately, it is the 29th of the month, so they have actually paced their everyday spending perfectly. The second way Dean and Emma can enter their transactions is by using the mobile application, which you can download from iTunes or Google Play. Here is a snapshot of the mobile phone app. Once you have logged in, you will be able to see the funds remaining in each jar, so you know exactly how much you have left to spend at any time. If you click on the transaction button, you will be able to see the list of recent transactions. And if you then click on the plus sign in the top right of the screen, you will be able to enter the details of your transaction and click Add Transactions. This will immediately update the funds remaining in your budget so you know exactly how much you have left to spend. As long as you take time to develop the habit of recording your expenses as you go, your budget will always provide you with an accurate measure of how much you can afford to spend without blowing the budget. As long as you don't spend more than you've accumulated in your jars, you can be absolutely confident that the potential surplus showing on your position summary page will become reality. And that's the whole point to having a budget. One other way your expenses can get recorded in the system is if they are set up as recurring expenses on the jars page. So if we have a look at Dean and Emma's jars page here, and let's select the utilities jar, you can see here that they have their electricity, rate, strata fees and water all set up as recurring expenses. The system will automatically generate transactions for each of these when their next due dates roll round. You can see here in the far right that their next due dates are listed. You'll also find that automatic transactions for both income and debt repayments will also occur as their due dates roll around, so you don't need to enter these manually. So any expenses that you have set up as direct debits or periodical payments, where the amount deducted is always the same and they occur to an established cycle, these can be set up as recurring and will therefore not need to be entered manually. Now, the really important thing is that you are entering your expenses as and when they occur. This will ensure that your budget is always up to date and you can rely on it to guide your spending. So a good budget must be able to tell you 4 very important things. What have I accumulated in my jars from previous months? What do I allocate to each of my jars on a monthly basis? What have I spent so far this month? And this is really important because most people can set up a budget where they say, well, here is my income and here is my expenses, but they have no way of tracking how they are actually going. So having a system that allows you to record your spending as you go is key, because it will then tell you exactly what the funds remaining in each of your jars is. This is really important because this is what guides your spending. When you pick up the phone app or look at your PC, you should know exactly how much you have left to spend without blowing the budget. And as long as you don't spend more than you've accumulated in your jars, as long as none of these jars here go red, your surplus will automatically just happen. So there you go. We may not use glass jars anymore, but these virtual jars can be just as effective in helping us stay on top of our finances and produce a consistent monthly surplus. A surplus that can be used to pay down debt and work towards achieving lifestyle goals that are truly important to us.